This is the Candid podcast. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. And as always, thank you for tuning in. For this podcast, I have yet another divisive topic, if that's what you want to call it, that I've seen pop up lately that has the ladies all hot and bothered. And it's something else that I would occasionally see pop up in a few older women's dating profiles as well. And we're talking about older men dating younger women. There are multiple reasons why older men choose to date younger women, and contrary to what women want to believe, they're not always based on the reasons that you may think they are. And I'm going to address that in a bit, but first, in what seems to be trending towards the norm for my podcast, I want to clarify a few things before I dive deeper into the points that I'm going to make. Just for clarity, for this first example, I'm going to go with a pretty extreme example, but it's going to prove my point later on when I give some more context behind it. But first off, an older man dating a younger woman is not grooming. And women need to understand and learn the definition of things before you all just go spouting off accusations at people. Let me be very clear and first state that I do not endorse young kids cursing at all, but we know they all do it eventually. Anyway, you know how young kids who begin their journey down the path of the potty mouth just start throwing out curse words and combinations that make zero sense. Like they'll be playing a video game and they'll say, "I'm tired of these damn ass people killing me," or something like that. Like, damn ass people. Like, what are you talking about? That's exactly how women are with the word grooming, or calling a man a damn pedo because he's dating a younger woman. You're just throwing terms out there and you don't even know what they mean or the true definition of them. Or either you're trying to change the meaning or the true definition of them, which in both cases is wrong. If we start out with grooming, the literal definition of grooming is the action or behavior used to establish an emotional connection with a vulnerable person, almost always a minor, under the age of consent. And sometimes the victim's family is included, to lower their inhibitions with the objective of sexual impropriety. It's most commonly a man forming a relationship with a girl under the age of 18, where he tries to bond with the young girl and manipulate her into pretty much only needing him and only him, so that once she turns 18, he can lure her away from her family and friends, begin a sexual relationship with her, and ultimately try to control and use her mind, body, and soul for his own pleasures or benefit. Of course, we all know that a full-on pedo is someone who does not wait until the girl is 18 to begin a sexual relationship with her. Let me say that I cannot be any more clear than what I'm going to be in stating that both of those scenarios are absolutely sick, deplorable, and I feel like there's a special place in hell for any man who does these kinds of things to vulnerable children. And nothing else really needs to be said here, in my opinion. Period. End of subject. As a matter of fact, when found guilty, I don't even advocate for these men being allowed to remain on the earth for more than a few days after the gavel hits the block. Just take them out back, put them down like an old horse, and send them to their special place in hell directly after the trial. Okay, now that we've got that out the way, women still seem to have an issue with throwing out accusations of grooming / pedo / illegal relationships when that's not actually the case. I don't care if you like it or not, but a 38-year-old man, or even a 48-year-old man, or even a 58-year-old man, or hell, even a 68-year-old man can legally date any woman over the age of 18. Period. Like it or not. As long as that man met that girl / woman when she was the age of 18, it is not grooming. It's not him being a quote pedo, and it's not illegal. Now, don't get me wrong. You're absolutely free to call it creepy, disgusting, weird, and even downright immoral. That is completely fine, and you're entitled to that opinion. And in certain circumstances, I agree with it being creepy or weird. But like it or not, it is not illegal. And you all are going to stop lobbing those kinds of accusations at those men just because you don't like the fact that they're dating a woman / girl that's 18. And again, as I said earlier, I'm using the extreme example here, and you're going to see why in a bit. Let me also clarify that this podcast is not about really old men dating 18-year-old girls. I'm just using the most extreme case in this point because I still hear women throw these terms out there, even if it's a man in his 40s dating a woman in her early to mid 20s. And I especially find it funny because one minute when you want to insult men, women, quote, mature faster mentally than men. But in the next minute, when you want to, insult men, then all of a sudden, a man in his 40s is a pedo or a groomer for dating a woman in her early to mid 20s because, men always have to be wrong and that girl's not mentally mature enough yet. My second point kind of ties into this statement in that a lot of you women out there are just bitter and mad because only one man is directly benefiting from dating a younger woman. And yes, that does include 18-year-olds. And you can't stand that. See, you women out there have no issues with females in their legal teens and early 20s joining the armed forces and potentially losing their lives to protect the country because, they're grown and they can make their own decisions. You also have no issue with said legal teens or young adults getting into the adult film industry because it's their body, their choice. And in that industry, strangely, they're getting absolutely plowed and plugged by much older men on a daily basis, sometimes by more than one dude at once. But again, it's their body, their choice. And while you wouldn't do it, you do support their decision to do so. Same with women starting an OnlyFools account where they're juicing a bunch of simp older men for their money and getting crazy paid off of it. Nope, no issue. Because once again, it's their body, their choice, right? They're not young, dumb, and impressionable then, right? Of course not. But when one of these legal teens / women in their early 20s gets into a relationship with one older man, you can't stand that because the woman isn't completely getting over on tons of men at once. And that infuriates you because you always want to see men lose. Even in the adult film examples, you ignore the women getting throttled for a living by men simply because she's making crazy bank and has millions of other men who aren't having relations with her, supporting her by purchasing her videos and content. So you look at it as, quote, a real job and file it under her just being sexually liberated and not letting men control her. She's taking control of her body and she decides if she wants to sleep with a bunch of guys, and that's fine. But when the script flips and only one man is benefiting from being with that younger woman, Then all of a sudden she becomes a completely functional idiot who can't make any rational decisions on her own because she's still, quote, young and dumb. Man, spare me that BS. You're just jealous because in a one-to-one older man, younger woman relationship, the man is getting screwed, but not screwed over. Trust me, these 18-year-old girls out here ain't as innocent and as dumb as you try to make them out to be. I've been in groups where literally, yes, literally, there was an 18-year-old sugar baby dating a 68-year-old man because he was helping her with college expenses in turn for her essentially being his sex slave and doing chores and things around the house. I know this because she posted in the group stating that she was dissatisfied with their sex life. Surprise, surprise, grandpa's having problems. Because the old man would finish less than a minute after they started having relations, and she was wondering if there was anything he could take to last longer. Again, like I said, this podcast is not about that extreme of an age gap, or more specifically, dating females in their legal teens. But I'm just using these examples to make a point of how hypocritical some of y'all women are out there. And speaking of hypocrisy, the last point I want to make before I move into the actual reasons older men date younger women is that most of you older women out there are exactly what I just stated, hypocrites. And you're hating the player instead of hating the game. Most of you are just mad at men because the dating game has flipped more into our favor than yours. And it just pisses you right the hell off. I've always said that the dating game favors women that are 18 years old until they start to hit their late 20s / very early 30s. You all have the options to date older men, men your same age, really whoever the hell you want to. And the size of the dating pool, if you will, is as wide as it's ever going to get for you. Contrast that with men that are 18 years old to their mid to late 20s, and they're competing for women in the same age group and often losing out because these younger men aren't yet established in themselves, in their careers, etc., whereas older guys are. Men oftentimes have to take it on the chin, if you will, early in their dating lives, but over the long term, it works out more in our favor. Because we can be in our late 60s and still date quite a bit younger, while that's just not the case with women for various reasons, and some of which I'm going to cover in a minute. So why do I call most of you women hypocrites? Because when you were younger and things were working in your favor, you took full advantage of it, and you know that. When I was in high school, there were a lot of girls that were 16 and 17 years old dating, quote, narcotics dealers in their damn early to mid 20s, which actually is / was illegal as hell. One of these girls ended up getting pregnant by one of these said street pharmacists and had to try to hide it so that they wouldn't get in trouble. Why is all of this valid, you ask? Because most of you older women who are now trying to demonize older men for dating younger women were those 16 and 17-year-old girls dating older men. And you had no issue taking advantage of it because it worked in your favor. Now that you're older and things have flip-flopped, you want to get all righteous and start trying to stand up for what's right. Give me a break. Again, you're just angry and bitter because the game has changed, but instead of hating the game, you're hating the player instead. But to be honest, men really don't care one bit because we all remember how you played the game to your advantage, and kudos to you. But now it's our turn, and we will have absolutely no remorse as we return the favor back to you. So now that we got a bit of housekeeping out the way, let's move on to the actual reasons why older men date younger women. As I said before, even though nothing I say here is going to change your mind, most of the reasons aren't what you older women think they are. With that being said, let's just rip the Band-Aid off and get the most obvious reason out the way first. And that is dating younger women because of their looks and sex drive. Look, I'm going to be completely honest here and say that yes, this absolutely can be a reason. And it's most definitely a huge perk. So why not take advantage of it? But let's be clear here. No good, smart man is going to date or marry a younger woman only for her looks and sex drive. Sure, some men will get into a friends with benefits situation or a sugar baby / sugar daddy arrangement. But if we're talking a real, actual relationship with the potential for marriage, a woman's looks and body ain't gonna be enough to sustain the relationship long term for a man looking for something real. Still, the fact does remain that most women's sex drive starts to drastically drop off when menopause hits, which is usually between the ages of 45 and 55, while men even in their 70s can still have a decent sex drive. And I do understand that that's not a universal thing. There are some women whose sex drives shoot up after menopause, but generally speaking, it drops. And while obviously you can't blame women for Mother Nature doing what Mother Nature does, you do have to face the fact that if given the choice, an older man still interested in sex is naturally going to turn to a younger woman first if he's seeking a new partner. Along these same lines, younger women are usually more sexually adventurous as well. And before you say anything, I'm not talking about threesomes, foursomes, group sex, or any kind of crazy stuff like that. I'm talking about acts between the two people in the relationship, the man and the woman. That's it. Still, when it comes to sex, younger women are usually more willing to try and do more things to keep the sex life spicy and exciting. And they're generally a lot more spontaneous because their sex drive is higher as well, which leads to a more satisfying and fulfilling sex life overall. And on that note, I just want to say I could absolutely care less if women feel that sex isn't as important to them in a relationship. Could care less. Men feel the same way about money, social status, and resources. Yet that doesn't stop you from choosing partners based on the criteria that you women deem a priority. Now, I'm not out here telling older men to leave their wives for a younger woman strictly because their sex life has fallen off. But men are physical, sexual creatures, and long-term sex is going to be a factor to consider for older single men when choosing their next partner. I remember meeting a woman the same age as me on a dating app, and she legit seemed like a genuinely nice woman, and we were having great conversation and getting along very well. Once we got to the subject of intimacy and sexual expectations, I kind of stated that I'd at least like to get it in a few times a week, not an hour, not a day, just a week. Well, that was an issue for her. She stated that she could care less about sex, that she was way more about the emotional aspect of being with a partner, and that she often felt pressured by her ex-husband into having relations, and that she never wanted to go through that again. Now, obviously, I very kindly told her that she seemed great, but that would be a deal breaker for me. We wished each other well, and we just decided to go our separate ways. But this was not an isolated incident. I've met more women around my age on dating apps, and while not all of them had similar sentiments, I did kind of notice a theme with these women that even semi-consistent sex was just not something they were even mildly interested in. Again, I'm not saying that they're wrong or blaming them, but for the quote, older men who are still looking to get it in on a regular basis, that's going to naturally cause them to focus on the pool of women who still have a high and vibrant sex drive, and that pool of women is usually younger. That's just how it is. To finish up this point, I want to circle back really quickly to what I said a few minutes ago as far as men not caring if women find sex as important in a relationship as men do. Another reason I feel that way is because women want men to understand their needs and wants in a relationship and make adjustments, even sometimes taking us men out of our comfort zones. Yet women will sometimes just plant a stake in the ground, so to speak, when they deem something as non-important and then make no effort to meet us men halfway. When women have hormonal changes, especially after having kids, it's deemed as natural, which it is. And us men often have to adjust and change to meet you women's needs. Sometimes, for example, women may get more emotional after having kids and need their man to hold them more or hug them more, reassure them more, tell them they're pretty, or even have the man open up more to the woman, which is something that is really, really hard for most of us men to do. But a good man will do it, even if we don't understand why you feel that way, because we understand that's what you need. Well, men have this thing called testosterone coursing through our bodies, and you women have no idea how powerful that hormone actually is. I swear, I think if a drop of testosterone like fell on a table or something, it would probably melt it. It's that powerful, I believe. It has made many of men do some completely stupid and ignorant things, and it has gotten plenty of other men in a whole lot of trouble. Babies out of wedlock, babies before they're married, babies with the wrong kind of woman, all that kind of stuff. Now, that's not me excusing the man ultimately making a dumb decision, because ultimately it's on him. But that testosterone is no joke. Trust me, when it's flowing and you're ready to go, you're ready to go. Just like women have hormones that sometimes uncontrollably drive their feelings and actions, testosterone works the same way for men. And that's especially true if a man is working out consistently. Your testosterone is going to be flowing because working out helps boost it. And a man is naturally going to want to get it in and have relations on a more consistent basis because, again, that's just how biology goes. It reminds me of this female dating coach. I forgot her name, but she was like a female dating coach that hooked women up with men. She actually apologized to men for thinking that sex was all men wanted because we're just all dirty dogs who have filthy minds. Why did she apologize, you ask? Well, apparently, at some point, she had some kind of hormonal imbalance or something like that, and she had to hop on the good old testosterone for a bit. And guess what happened? Yeah, she was more aroused than she'd ever been in her life. And she talked about how sometimes it felt like she couldn't control herself. She said her husband would literally bend over to pick up a piece of mail or something. She'd see his butt and smack him on the butt and be ready to get down with the get down, like right then and there. Welcome to being a man. She had a brief glimpse of what us men have to deal with sometimes on a daily basis, and it made her much more understanding as to why sex is so important to us. Again, it's not the only thing, and it never should be. And it should never come before finding an emotionally and mentally healthy partner. But no married man is going to want to have to go into the corner and, quote, beat off simply because his wife could care less about sex. Now, that doesn't mean that women are sex dispensers in any way, shape, or form, and that we just deserve sex on demand as men. I'm not saying that. But a good amount of you older women don't care about sex at all. or even why it's something that men need in a relationship. There's other reasons other than just testosterone. Men need that physicalness to feel closer to you and that intimacy and all that. There's other reasons, but again, you guys don't even care why it matters. So a lot of times older men will just move on to younger options where that part of the relationship is going to be much less of an issue, and we can actually focus on other aspects of our compatibility. Somewhat along these same lines is men wanting to date younger women because of their ability to have children. Again, this is not necessarily women's fault here, but the man upstairs designed women and men's bodies to work in different ways. Men can still father children literally until they take their last breath on earth, while women have a finite amount of eggs that can only legally be used when the woman turns 18 until she's in her mid-40s. But even then, pregnancy for a woman becomes more at risk for complications and miscarriages and all that kind of stuff after the age of 35. So a woman's prime window, if that's what you want to call it, for having kids is realistically between 18 and 35. Again, that's not women's fault, but it's just a fundamental truth that a man looking for kids has to strongly consider and think about. And since most of you women love to date doctors, let's use that as an example. The typical doctor doesn't finish his residency and become a fully licensed physician until he's in his early to mid 30s. So this man is just getting into his career at, say, 32 to 35 years old. And he's most likely going to want to work at least a few years to stack up some real money, get more financially stable, and maybe even start paying off some of that massive student loan debt he's racked up along the way to being a doctor, because a residency just doesn't pay as much money as being a fully licensed physician does. If that man wants to start a family, there's a very good chance in this situation that he's not going to be ready until he's possibly almost 40, or at least in his very late 30s, which is quite common. Given the fact that women over 35 have higher risk pregnancies, and let's pretend this doctor wants at least 3 kids, there's absolutely zero benefit to him trying to date and marry a woman in her 30s. He's most likely going to look for a woman in her mid to late 20s, let's say 26 years old plus, who are often ready to begin starting families and are looking for more established men in serious relationships. Now, older women will hate on this and call these men all kinds of names, but just from the simple fact of increasing the odds of carrying on his legacy through his children, this makes more sense to the man. And at one of my previous jobs, there was a man, not a doctor, who started having kids at like 41, 42 years old. And he legit wanted like 5 or 6 kids. He wanted a big family. And he married a woman that was like 28 years old because it just made more sense. Marrying a woman any older than that was most likely not going to give him enough time or security to safely have the 5 to 6 kids that he wanted. Sorry, older ladies, but if you were in this situation, you would have done the same thing. And as I said before, I don't blame you for this kind of scenario. The blame actually is coming in the rest of the podcast. But in this kind of scenario, I don't blame you. That's just how biology works. It's not your fault, but these are the cards that we've been dealt. Okay, older women, as I just promised you, here comes the blame. One of the reasons I've heard you accuse older men of dating younger women for is because younger women can be easily controlled. Well, first things first, let me fix something for you real quick. You misspelled the word submissive. Most of you older women are falling into the trap of being modern women, but wanting a traditional man. And I'm sorry, but that's just not how it works. Sorry, not sorry. Traditional men want traditional women, and we value traditional relationships. As I have said a few times in other podcasts, that does not mean that you're in the kitchen cooking, cleaning, and having babies unless that's the lifestyle that you desire for yourself. Men have no issue with you having jobs and working if that's what you want to do. But the man is almost always still taking care of all of the big bills, such as the house, the car note, health insurance, all that kind of stuff. And he operates as the, quote, head of the family. So therefore, he's going to want a woman who falls into more of a submissive role. Submissive does not mean being controlled. Most of us men have so many things on our plate between jobs, family, and trying to sneak in some hobbies for ourselves that we don't have time to sit up and try to control our woman's every move. You're just using that excuse because most of you older women are rebellious and you choose combat over cooperation. And ain't no man got time for that. Now, sure, some people are into, we'll call them lifestyles, where the man controls the woman. But this is not the podcast for that. So we're going to leave that one right where it is. But on a serious note, most men aren't looking for a text from you every hour wondering what your next set of instructions is. That's absolutely ridiculous. What we do want is something that a lot of women struggle with, which is called accountability. We're not going to go through your whole ass day and audit you line by line. But if you start majorly slacking off on your duties, we should be able to call you out and talk to you about it the same way you would do to us. If we stopped going to work for a month, bills started piling up, and we were laying around watching TV all day, you would rightfully want to know what the hell is up with us. Well, that's no different than if you're a traditional housewife and you let the domestic duties pile up for weeks at a time while you did nothing and there wasn't a valid reason for it. And I'm talking sickness, somebody passing away in your family, something like that. If we agree that I'm going to be the head of the household, manly man, and you're going to be the more submissive traditional wife, then we both need to be held accountable to those roles. And furthermore, just like women want peace, men value it just as much, if not more. No man wants to come home and have a jock measuring contest with a woman who's ill-equipped to participate in said contest. Submissive does not mean being pushed around or bullied. It means having trust in the man as the head of the household, that he's leading the entire family, you included, in the right direction. That does not mean you're not allowed to challenge him if he starts veering off course. But as I just mentioned a minute ago, we don't need to come home to a woman who's redlining our entire day and or challenging every single decision we make in some ridiculous battle over who controls the household, which is how a lot of you older women act. So older men smartly choose not to engage with you. And this actually seamlessly ties in with my next point, in that older men often date younger women because their attitudes are just more positive overall. Again, I'm going to keep referencing my time on dating apps and dating sites because it gives me tangible proof of how a lot of women actually think, rather than me just guessing or telling you what I've heard from other people. But going back to my original point, younger women's dating profiles were generally so much more positive, vibrant, and full of hope than older women's dating profiles were. I routinely saw younger women's dating profiles, and again, we're talking mid to late 20s and up, expressing how they're ready for a real relationship with the potential for marriage, where you both can grow together mentally, physically, and spiritually. Yes, I do understand that 40 to 50% of marriages still end in divorce. That's a fact. But I'd much rather start off a relationship with this kind of attitude as opposed to how most older women's profiles sounded, where they oftentimes are literally going on rants and writing some of the most nonsensical BS I think I've ever read before in my life. I went over this in a previous podcast, but a lot, and I do mean a lot, of older women's dating profiles go on and on about how they don't need a man. They want a man. They got them a house, a car, a job, and their own everything. Yada, yada, yada. And then continue by telling you how all men basically suck and are worthless. And then they finish off their little impromptu therapy session by listing a bunch of things that you can expect them not to do for you. Well, these women sound like winners. Why am I not swiping right on them? And my next point, once again, kind of blends in with this last point and the point before that. I actually could have combined them all into one, but I felt like it was better to break it down this way to really drive my point home. And that is, too many older women are damaged from their previous relationships, set in their ways, and probably shouldn't be dating anyway. If you feel the need to go on those aforementioned rants that I just described on a damn dating app, then you really need to take a good look in the mirror, see the problem, acknowledge the problem, get the hell out of the dating pool, and get help. Some of you older women are like war veterans with some form of relationship PTSD, twitching and tweaking at every slight little imperfection you may come across in a man, and you're ready to go kaboom at any given moment. A lot of you are also set in your ways and have this I am how I am, take it or leave it type of attitude, which I promise you repels good men quicker than an invite to watch an episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians with you. Even older men still want a woman that has some zest for life, wants to continue working on herself, and realizes that none of us will ever be perfect. But that doesn't mean we can't keep striving to be better versions of ourselves every single day. Based on what I've seen, younger women align much better with this kind of mentality. And they simply don't carry around all of the scars of war that a lot of you older women do. There's not nearly as many younger women who have been through divorce or long-term situations that ended horribly. So their outlook on what it takes to keep a man and maintain a healthy relationship is just so much more positive and inviting and upbeat than most older women's attitudes are. Too many older women have let the bitterness from their failed relationships become a toxin that has corrupted their ways of thinking, and no amount of reasoning with y'all is going to work. Because yet again, I am how I am, take it or leave it. So most men simply choose option B, I'll leave it, and go find a younger woman who doesn't have all of that baggage and negativity. A good example of this contrast between older women's thinking and younger women's thinking is something as simple as working out. I saw way more chunkier, younger women who said they would like a man to work out with them or a gym buddy because they wanted to drop some weight, while a ton, no pun intended, of the older women's profiles would quite literally say, yes, I'm fat. No, I don't care. And no, I won't go to the gym for you. What you see is what you get. And for us men, we're thinking, obviously, this kind of mentality extends much farther than just working out. And no, it's not all about looks or trying to get your woman skinny. So let's not even go there with that BS. It's just an example that perfectly illustrates how a lot of older women simply don't care about changing or improving themselves at all. And while that's completely your choice to feel that way, hey, do you? I always say, do what you want to do. It's also the men's choice to seek younger options that are more in line with their thinking. We both have options. The final point that I wanted to make before I wrap this podcast up is also something that I kind of stated in a previous podcast, and that is older women having much younger kids and or prioritizing their kids over everything. I have seen a good amount of women's profiles who were in their late 30s and above that have very young kids. And one of their biggest war cries was, I'm a mom with young kids who's very busy, so you must understand that my free time to date is very limited. Or the classic, my kids will always come first, and you must understand that. I've even seen some women in their early 40s who have kids that are like 6 years old, 4 years old, and then a 2-year-old out there trying to date. Now, let me be clear. I am not blaming these women for getting started late with having kids. I don't blame you one bit. And I don't know the situations behind why these women are single. It could have legitimately not been their fault. Maybe they were married and the man messed up and they got divorced. So I'm not blaming you for that. But either way, you need to understand that a good amount of single men in their early to mid 40s have kids that are at least teenagers, and that they're not trying to casually date you and wait around 10 to 15 years until your kids are all grown before you can finally wrap the relationship up or get serious. Or if you're one of those women whose kids will always come first no matter what, few men are going to be okay with playing second fiddle to your kids when they could simply go find a younger woman that maybe doesn't want kids and avoid that whole problem altogether. And in case you missed my previous podcast where I addressed this, I am not saying that a woman should ever put her man over her kids. But a woman does need to find time to prioritize her relationship with the man and make him feel like you're all one unit rather than it just being her and her kids versus the man, and he just needs to get in where he can fit in. Truth be told, most men are already very apprehensive about raising another man's kids as it is. And then when you throw in this kind of attitude on top of it, a younger woman with no kids just makes much more sense and comes with much less headache. In closing, as is the case with all of my podcasts, I just wanted to correct some of the very blatant lies and clear up a few misconceptions on this topic. Being fair, a few of the reasons why older men date younger women are not women's fault. And it's simply just a function of nature / biology / the man upstairs. But that doesn't completely let women off the hook either. There are some areas that older women can improve upon to make it more compelling for men their age to date them. And why I highly doubt that many women will agree with me or even listen to my points, I still said what I said, and I had to set the record straight, and I stand by all of it. Because some of the nonsense that I was hearing from a lot of these older women on this topic was just categorically false, non-factual, and it was getting way out of hand. As always, if you're listening in on YouTube, I appreciate a like, a subscribe, or you leaving a comment. I'm continuing to try to bring you great content, and I hope that you enjoy the kind of podcast that I'm bringing to you. Thanks for listening in. I will catch you on the next one.